everyone. My name is Elena Zevlev, and I'm the founder and the CEO of CADAF. CADAF is a physical and virtual platform that is dedicated entirely to digital art. Please follow us on www.cadaf.com to see exciting updates and events that we host very, very regularly. So today I'm very excited to be the part of this conversation. We are very happy and pleased to be the part of the Art Electronica Festival this year. And especially we are excited to present a wonderful exhibit by the artists who participated previously in CADAF events and that all of us sincerely admire. So right now I'm passing the word to Andrea Stoer, the director of CADAF, who will tell you more about the exhibition and about the artists that participate in it.
Thank you, Elena. We're very excited today to be joined by Spalter and Sofia Crespo, two amazing artists working with artificial intelligence. We're very excited to be part of this year's Art Electronica Festival and presenting artificial seascapes. So artificial seascapes reflects on the impact of humans and technology have on the environment and explores new ways to visualize this. By incorporating artificial intelligence, algorithmic tools, and data processing into their practice, Spalter and Crespo allows to see mundane events from the perspective of a machine. By shifting the focal point, scenes that are familiar to the human eye, cruise ship images, sea creatures begin to evolve, resulting in new compositions that have never been seen before. The artists invite the viewer to submerge in these new worlds where beauty and technology collide, exposing questions of human perspective, consciousness, and preservation. So I am very excited today to talk about this exhibition with Anna and Sofia and Elena. Just to give you a little bit of background, and then I'll pass it on to the artist. And Spalter is a digital mixed media artist and is also a pioneer in the original digital fine arts world. She founded the digital fine arts program at Brown University and the Rhode Island School of Design in the 1990s. She also still does lectures and has her studio practice. And then Sofia, I'm sure like you will have a lot more to say, both of you. Sofia is a neural artist working with huge interest in biology-inspired technologies. One of her main focuses is the way organic life uses artificial mechanisms to simulate itself and evolve. This implying the idea that technologies are a biased product of the organic life that created them and not a completely separate object. So I think that we are all very excited to hear more about everything. So I guess right now, Anne and Sofia, if you can introduce yourselves and how you got involved with working with these new mediums. So maybe we can start. I have Anne here first, so I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elena and Andrea, for inviting me to be part of this. And Sofia, I look forward to hearing you talk about your work because it's really awesome. I have been using technology in my artwork now for several decades, but I actually was very opposed to it in the beginning when I was at art school at RISD, and then I actually transferred to Brown and was a math major, and then went back to RISD to get an MFA in painting. And I felt like the computer somehow was not an artistic tool, that you had to have your hand involved, and I was really hostile, let's say, about it. But I had a job in banking before I went to graduate school, which was not my field. And going every day to an office, I began to really want to work on my artwork. I was in New York City. I got paid a lot in banking, more than I've made as an artist ever since. And I started using computer art programs on my computer. And then when my boss came by, I could click on Excel and be back in the banking world. And I really began to enjoy some of the powerful things that the computer could do. So when I went back to grad school, I really wanted to take a course in computers and art. And that was at the Rhode Island School of Design. And at the time there were none. So the head of graduate studies said, why don't you teach one? Which if you've taught, you know, it's actually a really great way to learn something, is to have to teach it. And from that, I began to really take it more seriously in my work, integrate it into my traditional work, and ended up writing a book to support my courses, the computer and the visual arts. I then actually worked in the computer science department at Brown as an artist in residence with their computer graphics research group. So I was able to get kind of a technical education as well in the tools that I was using, which I think is like learning about linseed oil or brushes or anything that, you know, you want to understand the craft of what you're doing. So I really went from kind of abhorring the whole thing to being a total addict and proselytizer, and use it every day now in my artwork. And while I was writing the book, I interviewed many pioneers of the field. And my husband was an art history major at Brown. And because the book took me 6 years to write, he got to learn a lot about the early computer art. And he said, wow, these people are, they're like the Impressionists. They're just working and doing all these amazing things, but the whole art academy hates them. We should try to support them and acquire some works. And that's how the digital art collection started. So all those things were kind of intertwined.
So that's very interesting. That's great.
So, yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much, Elena and Andrea. And yeah, same here. And I love your work and I'm very inspired by it. So, yeah, for me, it started like the digital art. Well, I was already interested in digital art, but then my best friend took me as a birthday present to a small workshop here in Berlin by Jean Kogan. This was already some years ago. And since then, I got introduced to machine learning. And from that, before that, I didn't know much about programming. I didn't know much about generative art. And suddenly this opened a completely new world for me. And my focus shifted completely. Suddenly I wanted to learn programming and I wanted to learn more about computers in general. So I enrolled to the university here to study computer science. And it was like, it's strange because I don't know so many people who got introduced to generative art just from machine learning. Because like, yeah, most of the people I know who are into like generative art, or machine learning, they already were really interested into generative art, and that led them to like machine learning techniques. But I guess that was, yeah, regarding the technique, that's kind of the story. But regarding the seascapes, I think it all begins, in a way, my parents are a big influence because my father is a sea captain. So he's always told me stories about his time in boats, and he spent years just traveling around the world on a huge ship. And my mom is an environmental law researcher. So I feel like somehow I have like through them a large connection with nature. And when I was like around 5 years old, they took me to an aquarium. And in this aquarium, they had like a cinema, but like kind of those older cinemas where they give you these 3D glasses and you see like a movie, which is kind of like, yeah, 3D. And I was very little, so suddenly I had this jellyfish, which in my mind, like I thought the jellyfish was real and getting really close to me. And I just screamed and left the cinema, like I just ran away. And since then, I kind of developed like a real phobia of jellyfish, which like, even as an adult, I would get into the sea. Like the last time I traveled to Miami, for instance, like I was at the sea and I saw jellyfish and I was like, oh, no, like I still cannot fully like I'm working on it, but I feel like somehow through art, I got to like connect with them differently. So I became so interested in like all the different types of jellyfish, and also their nervous systems and their textures, like their visual textures. So before I found out about machine learning at all, I was obsessed with trying to render them in 3D. But then that's such a completely different way of working and approaching an image. So suddenly I was I was working with data sets of real jellyfish, and I think that's one of the things that became like really meditative for me, looking at the actual images of the creatures and working with them. So yeah.
That's so interesting. That was actually one of my next questions. Like, I think you answered it beautifully. And because since our whole exhibition is around the marine subject and the seascapes and the ocean, so I was very curious as to how this subject matter comes into your work. So I think that is amazing. Like, I'm sure you were so exposed to the ocean and all these stories, and like the aquarium. I love the jellyfish story. But maybe, and you can tell us a little bit about how the marine subjects and like all the oceans are part of your work and how they inspire you.
Absolutely, Andrea. I have water in my work going back to the minute I started creating artwork. I think it's just something that I connect with. I grew up sailing and snorkeling and then scuba diving, and I love the ocean in an objective way. And then also, I think subjectively, I'm interested in surrealism and dreams, and I've always had dreams about water and waves and the ocean. And so to me, it also represents the unconscious, you know, in a personal thing, as well as something I'm interested in out in the world. So I have water a lot. And then my artwork is primarily about the modern landscape and seeing the things that we sort of edit out, trying to make our landscapes look more traditional and like Arcadia with, you know, grass and cows under a tree and things. So my work focuses on skyscrapers and strange technological things, towers and things that you'd see by the highway, and ways of moving through the environment that are modern also. So I shoot a lot of video out my car window. I've shot from airplanes and chartered helicopters over Manhattan to get video from that modern perspective as well. So to me, those things came together with this work, the ocean, and then cruise ships to me they're like a skyscraper that's laying sideways and traveling around on the ocean. So it's sort of a little bit scary looking, but also very cool, and to me, very modern. And while I was working on these pieces, the whole, you know, pandemic came about, and I started reading articles about how cruise ships were, people couldn't cruise anymore, but there aren't enough docks for all the cruise ships to come in and rest. So there's actually these sort of pods of multiple cruise ships that are out at sea, just waiting till they can come in, or they come in and get supplies and then go back out to sea. So that seemed like sort of a comment on everything that's going on. And that inspired the title of the videos. One is Quarantine Cruise, one is Going Nowhere. And it just sort of resonated with me, of the feeling of being in quarantine and being on lockdown and having our whole lives disrupted and changed in this way. And then I've been experimenting with artificial intelligence, not programming it myself like Sofia, I guess, is, but using a platform called playform.io, which anyone can use. Actually, it's on the web and you can go there, and putting in my own image sets. So these were an image set that combined large cruise ships, container ships, and luxury yachts was my starting set. So it kind of puts them all together. And then the colors are from another artificial intelligence iteration set where I just handpicked a whole lot of colors and put them in, and it generated new colors. And I used those frames as a video. And then I took the ship frames and made them into a video and keyed out parts of the image so that the colors could show through underneath.
No,
Was the process. But I was really fascinated by the way it saw the situation, I think the way only a computer can see it, which also seemed to me to be kind of timely. And it made compositions that I really liked them when I saw them, but I would never have made them on my own. So the process was really like working with an interesting studio partner who kept suggesting these fun things to do. So I really have enjoyed working with AI. I think it's just introduced colors and compositions and different aspects into my work that came from me because I chose the images and which algorithm to use, but that I wouldn't have discovered without that. So it's been really exciting in that way.
Oh, that sounds great. And it's like a subject that you both touch upon, that is like the consciousness and how you can see all these different situations and things that seem very normal, but through the perspective of a machine. And so it's like kind of like the subconscious that you were talking about, the water, and how these new images can be created because it's sometimes not even from a human perspective, but it's like tapping into unconscious.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the computer's sort of having a dream, and I'm spying on it.
This is a great way to look at it, I think. Can I follow up with one little bit technical question that I just realized I have and that
Sure.
I get sometimes? Do you know, or you probably know for sure, how many images go into each data set? So how many images you use to create one of these videos?
But this is one of the things that's great about Playform is you don't need hundreds or thousands of images, which you often do to train these algorithms. So my data set was about 35 images. And if you've ever created your own data set, it's extremely time consuming and tedious. I've just found all the images online. So I did a Google search and then started downloading things. But if you need thousands of images, it can just take weeks and weeks of research and collecting and modifying them so that they make sense to the computer. You start to see things from the perspective of a machine. So if we see a picture of someone in front of a cruise ship, we still just see a cruise ship, but the computer is seeing that person as well, and it's a whole different image. So you also have to understand how the computer's analyzing things and choose images that make sense for the data set. So I think it's a big part of the work.
Got it.
Yeah.
How about you, Sophia? How many images and how do you approach this?
I was scraping for a whole week. So this particular data set of marine life was like kind of like 250,000 images.
Wow.
That's a lot of images.
Amazing.
So
Yeah,
how do you approach the curation? How do you choose these images?
We used another neural network that can segment. We did it really overcomplicated.
No, that's very interesting.
Yeah, like we originally scraped like a lot more than 250. Like we did it like 400 or something. Then we used the segmentation and object detection algorithm that can, for example, detect if there's, like I have categories. So I created like a bunch of categories based on which I was like scraping. And for example, there is like octopus, jellyfish, sea anemone, all these things, right? And then I say like, okay, only give me the images that have at least 80% sea anemone, octopus, etc. So then it filters out like a lot of images which are, somebody eating like an octopus or, all this like, obviously like I didn't want that in the data set. So, yeah, and then after that, it was actually training for a full month. So yeah, like fortunately, like Jean had like access to some GPUs, so we put it to train remotely for a full month. there. So it was a lot of like
A lot of data.
yeah, a lot of data, a lot of training. And then the process is, well, chromatophores. Chromatophores in real life are like pigment cells that some creatures have and which allow them to shift color so that they replicate the background in which they're on, so they can camouflage. You've probably seen like videos of octopus, like an octopus doing that, kind of merging with the sea bed. And so what we did is like, you know, a neural network learns in different layers. So first it starts by learning some features and then another set of features and another set of features. And what we did with my collaborator, Andrew Pouliot, we separated those layers. And so I wanted to find the layer where the neural network learned enough color information and like the basic shapes of the creatures. So, so that it would create like, for example, everything in color, everything in purple, everything in a single like uniform color. And yeah, that's basically what we did. So yeah, to create the illusion of chromatophores. Yeah.
I think that it's interesting. I think many artists, and it sounds like both of us are doing this, don't run the algorithms to their final point. I know working with GANs, you know, it's trying to make something that looks like a member of the image set that you gave it. So if it ran through its whole process and was successful, it would just be making another boat, like another photo that one would find online. Yeah. And actually, as an artist, to me, the interesting part was in the middle and often the early stages when it's learning and trying to understand what I fed it. And then it makes these crazy compositions.
Exactly. Like, I think this is made at layer 4 or 5, and the network learned like 15 or something. So like, if I go all the way to layer 15, it looks exactly like the data set, and I didn't want that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. I think this is very interesting, and it's interesting that you're using different approaches to the machine learning. And we always get a lot of questions from collectors and from the audience because there's so much confusion going on with artificial intelligence and machine learning. What's the part of the machine and what's the part of the artist, and how artist is working in this new world with the machines. This is great. So I guess I can go to my next question, which we wanted to talk about. So now we wanted to switch gears a little bit to more of your work as women in this art and tech, kind of in the intersection of art and technology, and women artists working with machine learning. And there are still not that many women who are working in this field. And we were curious, as we're ourselves a female team, all-female team, working with a little bit on the intersection of art and technology as well, but especially, of course, with the artists who are working in the intersection of art and tech. It's still a rare kind of occasion to see women artists working like you. So we were wondering, what are your impressions, if you feel, how do you feel as women artists, if anything has been changing in the recent years, and maybe any of your tips to the other women artists who want to start working with machine learning and artificial intelligence and with the technology overall. The question, both of you.
Do you care who starts? Or sorry. I actually think that digital art is an area where women have been present from the very beginning. And there's some similarities to the video art world, I think, because it was a new type of art and not dominated by any gender. Women, in a way, felt more freedom and more attraction to it. And in our collection, we have many women, and one of the ones I'd love to highlight is a woman named Vera Molnar, who's now 96 and began using the computer in the 60s. And there are several women like that. And I'm thinking also in the video world, Joan Jonas and Dara Birnbaum, really, there's been female artists who have helped define both of those new technologies. So I think it's not so much a problem of women entering into the space, and in fact, they're kind of attracted to it, but then it meets up with the art world in which women are still just very underrepresented in the top galleries, in the best museums. And especially if you're a middle-aged woman, it's like a weird, you're not super young and just being discovered, or you're not, in your 70s and you have this huge body of work and now it's being discovered or shown. So I do feel like it's a strange kind of place to be, and difficult at times for someone to show the work and get excited about it. And that sometimes definitely works against me.
Right. So it's more of the matter of representation and actually participation actively in the art world than being engaged.
I can say, like, I agree about the representation. I wish, like, I'm 100% pro more diversity and representation. Like, I'm always checking, when I look at names, like, and somebody's organizing like an exhibition or whatever, I always kind of try to check, like, what's the ratio there. Even if the names don't always tell you everything, and somebody can be non-binary or, trans or whatever. So you don't always know, but I can say, also, I love Vera Molnar, such a great inspiration. And I think
sorry.
No.
I say one of the good things about the digital world, and in a way about this whole lockdown and virtualization of everything, is that often you see the artwork and you don't know what person made it, their gender, their race, anything
definitely,
about them, and you can kind of judge it on its own merits.
Definitely. I used to have like alter egos where I was like a man, and I was like collective, I had. How did
that work? Did that help?
Yeah, like it helped me, because I was just, I felt self-conscious at the beginning. So like, when I first started, I was like a very, very shy person, and I didn't feel comfortable like sharing any work under my own name. It helped me, like it made me feel more free in a way. But then eventually, like when I got invited to give talks, it was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to stick to my actual name now. and like assume who I am. So and then I just worked on my self-confidence. So to, like it was also, I think, so for example, sometimes I would be like trying to figure out how to technically do something, and I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to be the only woman asking like a dumb question somewhere, So I was always like, is this a dumb question? And sending it to my friends, like, do you think this is a dumb question? Do you think that I can ask this, And I think my advice now to women who are getting started in this would be just ask whatever you want to ask, and like there's nothing to, you don't need to rely on like men to accept you, into this world just because there are more men in like technology, in like the more technical kind of side of it. Online, at least, it feels very male dominated, like all the forums where you go, or on GitHub or like Stack Overflow or whatever, so
there's also no such thing as a dumb question when you're learning about something. So I'm sure those questions answer a lot of people's questions that they hadn't.
Yeah, and then now, even if even if you don't have a more technical background, if you have an art history background, you can use the tools like what Anne is using, and you can start working in this field. So yeah, that seems to be a very right moment to jump into this. One other question that we wanted to ask is about actually the recent events and pandemic. So it's quite a general question. If anything has changed in your practice with the pandemic, how it has influenced you, maybe if you notice the collector behavior has changed a little bit. Are people still buying? Are they buying more? Are they buying less? Like, I don't know. I know that it's a lot of questions in one, but maybe if you can share your impressions, that would be great. Again, for both.
I have a friend who does art auctions, and he says its business has never been better.
Yeah.
The people are at home buying stuff online, expensive things just from previews on the computer. So that's good for the art world.
That's very good for our world. It's perfect.
Yeah, I guess in relationship to everything that's been going on, not just the pandemic, but the whole Black Lives Matters movement, I made a series of prints based on the Quarantine Cruise video, 3 prints, editions of 5 each, and used them as a fundraiser to give to organizations. If people bought one, they could choose a Black Voices organization, and those sold out in under 2 weeks. So I think it was also sort of inspired by what was going on, and the ships were about the pandemic, but then it also related to the Black Lives Matter, protests and movement that's going on.
Wonderful. That's great. How about you, Sofia?
I can say that, like, I hadn't, before this whole thing happened, I hadn't had much time to really look at the crypto art world at all. So now, after all my shows got canceled, suddenly I was like, how am I going to pay rent now? Like, how am I going to survive? So I started to, like, think more seriously about it and put more of my work out there. And it has helped me a lot, actually.
What platforms are you on? That's really, really interesting.
I'm on Super Rare. It's kind of like the main platform I'm on right now. And I also have some works on OpenSea. But I feel like the ones on Super Rare got more attention because they're working really hard to promote it. And I'm thinking of putting some pieces on Known Origin now. So
very interesting.
Yeah,
and how do you
about Super Rare as well? Like, I think it's fascinating, and then it's also just a different art economy and marketplace that maybe is one of a future thing, and having everyone inside and on their computer maybe is actually helping it become more accepted.
Totally.
Have you tried any crypto platforms, blockchain platforms to?
I purchased some things. I purchased some things on it, and then I've been thinking of putting some things on it as well. But I've actually been super busy, even though I'm indoors all the time. I haven't done it, but I think I will.
I'm so tempted to buy stuff. Like I never had the kind of like, because I think I don't really I didn't reach the point where I'm like financially in the position of saying like, okay, I want to start collecting. Like I can collect if with another artist we exchange our work. But I think like after seeing Super Rare's like galleries, suddenly I'm looking at some piece and I'm like, oh, I really want to bid on it, but no, I should save. But yeah, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think that I would get hooked, like wanting to collect there. And suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I really want to.
Yeah, it's super addictive. But it's hard to stop.
Yeah, and some things are really inexpensive. Even if the price listed is high, when you see the bidding, it actually sells for way less. So it's kind of a nice way to start collecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
That's a great tip.
And it's much easier than dealing with the gallery world. You don't have to know anyone. You don't have to go, for people that aren't used to going into galleries and dealing with the gallery, I think it opens up collecting to a much wider audience of people that aren't engaged every day anyway in the art world.
Yeah. And also to the first time collectors, so they see something and they buy for the first time, which is great. All right, I think Andrea has some other questions.
This is so inspiring, like I'm loving it. So I was just wondering, since Sofia, I think you're in Europe right now, right?
Yes.
And you're in the US. So I was just wondering, like, there's a question for both of you, like, where do you feel there's a stronger market for new media and digital art? Is it in Europe? Is it stronger in Europe? Is it stronger in the US? Like, which market do you feel is more open and has adopted this medium more? Because
I
we
think
see
US. Sorry.
That's interesting.
I think it's the US. Like when
Even though a lot of important work has come from Germany in the digital art world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the marketplace where I've actually have sold digital work is New York, New York. And even other, you know, parts of the US, it's a tough market for video or digital.
Surprisingly, because I would think that in Silicon Valley or...
Yeah, no, they all want traditional work there. It's weird. You think they
get
more
tired
with the tools that they created, but their interest seems to be more in traditional.
The tools that they created.
Yeah, because you can see in Europe, there's so many exhibitions happening and a lot of like adoption, but it's interesting to see that maybe the market for actual buying is stronger in the US. And that's something that we've been looking at a lot and just like trying to understand, since it's such a quick changing market and like people are starting to get so excited, because what we always tell them, it's like, it's just it's a medium. So just like like using technology as a medium, it's like using a camera, it's like using all these things that the artwork, the final object involves the process, but then there's also a final object. So I think that's really great. So I think now Elena has another question.
Yeah, I have one final question for our great conversation. So before that, I want to say that the pandemic and the inability to host actually physical events has made something very interesting and cool for us. So we were able to host our online event, which we haven't, we wanted to have a virtual event, but we haven't envisioned it for a long time. And this became an opportunity for us to host something like that. And then now that all of us can participate in Art Electronica, I think that's really, that's really a great, one of the great outcomes of what has happened. But I guess one of the things that we're curious about is what are your other new projects that you're working on right now? Are there any shows or exhibitions that you are planning to participate in, or anything that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah,
so I think Sofia mentioned that everything got canceled or moved ahead. I have an upcoming solo show at the Cyber Arts Gallery in Boston. It was supposed to be April, then it was supposed to be September. Now it's to be determined.
Okay.
And I'm also doing a solo thing at the St. Kate Art Hotel in Milwaukee. And that's also, you know, when I can travel again without feeling afraid.
So all of that are physical, though, physical events.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And Sofia, everything.
There is one thing which still didn't get canceled, and that's a residency we're doing in Spain, in Zaragoza. We are now like, we moved all the production to do it like here in Berlin, and then we would, don't know yet, but we would travel there end of the year to like mount the the exhibition, it's still like a physical exhibition, but it's all kind of like, we are hoping that it happens, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are building like an aquarium, an artificial aquarium. So, but it, yeah, we're generating like 3D creatures and like 3D printing them. So, so we're, yeah, so that's what we're working on right now.
That sounds fascinating.
How large are the 3D printed pieces?
So, so each creature is going to be like 15 centimeters, and they are like, we're gonna assemble them together. We're generating it by parts, and then printing it by parts too, and then kind of putting it together as if it were a Lego or something. So we expect like maximum size is going to be like 25 centimeters tall. Yeah, so let's hope. We're still in the software phase, so we're still like in the part where we generate all the meshes and all the geometry for it.
Are you generating the 3D forms with AI, or just making an image into 3D?
Yeah, we're also using like GANs to generate 3D meshes. A lot of the times the output is just a blob. So we're still
forever?
Like,
does it take a really long time to complete?
It takes, yeah, it takes quite a bit of time actually. It takes like, it's a lot more work because you need to really normalize the geometry. You need to have like a really, really consistent data set, because otherwise it gets very confused. So it's like quite a bit more to work with. And like, I'm working with somebody who knows like a lot more about 3D than I do, because I know more about 2D than 3D. So I know more, I know about 3D rendering, but not about like so much about the geometry bit. So that's what I'm learning through this project basically.
Sounds really great. Is that for Spring Break Art Show LA, I took one of the images I had made with AI and worked with someone to make a 3D model, and then realized it as an enormous inflatable that was 10 feet high. So like sometimes you want it to get out and become a physical object. I'm interested.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Can we see it somewhere? Yeah, maybe
on my website. You can
yeah,
see it.
great. We'll share your websites, both of you, with viewers. Yeah, I mean, I hope physical events will come back to our lives, and I hope we are based in New York, and really hope to be able to travel to Europe at least, I don't know, 2021, but very hopeful, I don't know,
and
at the end of 2020. That would be great.
Posted on the exhibitions and on the events, because we would love to post about them, and we would love to see them, and just to let everyone know like what is happening. Like, please keep us in the loop, and we really hope that they can happen very soon.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
So
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We really invite everybody to see the show itself online, which is now the easiest way to see art on Art Electronica platform. So we are very excited. Right now it's not up yet. Well, we are recording this, but we're all looking forward for it to be up very, very soon. Yeah, we are very excited about the show.
So thank you so much, Anna and Sofia. It was really inspiring and a pleasure talking to you, and we're so excited to show your work, and hopefully we can meet in real life soon.